We are joined now by Florida Surgeon General Dr. Joseph Ladapo. He has created a bit of a stir in the universe out there with his decisions on what Florida parents can and cannot do when it comes to vaccines for their kids. So let me start with this question for you, Dr. Ladapo. Buck has got a young kid. I've got 3 kids. I think in the wake of the COVID shot, which it's quite clear no young, healthy child ever needed. A lot, in my opinion, you can tell me if you disagree with that, but a lot of parents out there now are questioning much of what they were told by public health experts overall. You're a parent as well. What do you think parents should do when it comes to researching medical treatments for their kids? Let me just ask a secondary question.
Yeah.
I imagine you have gotten and will get your kids some of the vaccination recommendations. How would you analyze this? What would you tell parents they should do? What would you suggest?
Yeah. So we need to, I think that as a parent, I mean, we all want to do what's best for our children. And one of the ways you do that is through that common idea, that fundamental idea of informed consent. And it's just, you can't be an honest person and have lived over the last few years and not appreciate that there are some gaps in informed consent. And, it's always a challenge, but it's particularly a challenge with vaccines. I mean, that's I don't feel any way about them, for, against, I don't feel any way about them. I do feel very strongly about informed consent. And you cannot have informed consent when you have mandates, when there are negative repercussions for not complying. And you can't have informed consent when doctors or some parties want you to do something so badly that the research isn't enough. The questions about what's best for your kid isn't enough, aren't really fulfilled. So parents, I think, need to be talking to other parents, because a lot of parents are now looking into this. And I myself have learned so much. And here I am. I went to medical school. I have a PhD from Harvard. I spent years taking care of patients, and there was so much I didn't know about vaccine research.
Can you tell us, Dr. Ladapo, just specifically, and this is interesting, I think, to everybody, but for any of our Florida listeners, there's a change in vaccine mandate policy now in the state of Florida, but can you give us some of the specifics? What does it mean? What doesn't it mean? And what is trying to be achieved here?
Sure. The overall goal is really to end those vaccine mandates, because they're
so just to be clear, Doc,
yeah.
So no mandates of any kind to go to school for vaccines.
Absolutely not. Nothing for, if you want to put something in your body or you want to put something in your child's body, God bless you. But no one should be forced to do that. I mean, that's a fundamental, very black and white ethical issue. In terms of shifting to the specifics, in the Department of Health, there are a handful of vaccines that we mandate. Obviously, I didn't do that. That was a predecessor that did that. And we're going to peel those back. So those are going to be gone. Those mandates are going to be gone. And we will, we'll work with the lawmakers to, explore a more ethical position. And it's very simple. If the people who are really worried about this, no one's taking away anyone's vaccine. No one's preventing anyone from pursuing or taking a vaccine if they want. What we do want to prevent is coercion. And that is the current position that is inherent to mandates, and it's unethical. And I know it's a shock for many people. That's been obvious with the feedback we've received, but it truly is an unethical position.
If you were, my kids are all old enough, 17, 14, and 10. They're doing well, knock on wood, health-wise. But if I were coming to you personally and I said, would you recommend vaccines? Like, for instance, polio, for instance, for smallpox. I don't even know the full list of vaccines. Would you recommend some vaccines? Would you recommend some not? And your standard if you were an individual's doctor at this point?
Yeah, sure. It's a great question. So I will tell you, like, as I said, this is a new area for me. I mean, it was really COVID that opened up my eyes to many things in the healthcare area that were happening and I wasn't aware of, that were very important. So I myself am still on the journey, if you will, in terms of my learning. So some of the vaccines I'm more knowledgeable about in terms of the evidence informing that inform their benefits and risk. And I think it's important, guys, to remember that each one, it's just like a drug, right? So you don't, like, we wouldn't say, oh, would you recommend, not drugs as in illicit drugs, but medications. We wouldn't have a conversation about, oh, do you take medications? No, we wouldn't have a conversation like that. We'd have a conversation about, well, what do you think about this medication? And what do you think about that medication? And that's the same thing with vaccines. So for the ones that I feel more knowledgeable about, there's some that I'm more comfortable with in terms of in terms of how well they've been studied, in terms of the benefit risk profile. For example, right now, that's how I feel about the measles vaccine. Not everyone feels that way. And I think that it's fine if they don't feel that way. I think as long as you're making informed decisions. There are other vaccines that I have opinions about that go, in one direction or the other. But, again, it's really, in my opinion, it's important to evaluate each one individually because they're not the same. They are not the same. The amount we know, the risks, the benefits, they are not the same.
Shouldn't we be asking, and I appreciate you being on with us, Dr. Joseph Ladapo, Surgeon General of Florida, shouldn't we be asking why autism rates have skyrocketed in this country? Leave aside everything else. It is a public health failure, I would think, that in this day and age, we have massive increases in autism. Now, partly you can say, okay, maybe we just recognize the symptoms better. There's certainly an argument there. But I think if you look at the growth in autism, diagnosis and symptoms, all those things, certainly if you look at the numbers on allergies, for instance, the number of kids that are allergic to peanuts now compared to when I was a kid, or certainly when people out there far older than me were kids, it didn't exist. Shouldn't we be asking why these things are occurring and trying to have less of them? Like allergic reactions when kids die from peanuts is an awful thing. We shouldn't be having this happen. And the number of kids being diagnosed with autism is a national emergency to me. Shouldn't we be trying to figure out what's going on? Isn't that the essence of science?
Yeah, we absolutely should. And, you've named some conditions, and there are a lot of other conditions. There are a lot of autoimmune conditions. And, anytime you're tinkering is not quite the right word, but anytime you're trying to modify the immune system, it's not like, it's not some precision medicine that just targets one place. That's not the reality. The reality is that everything in our bodies is connected. So you change one thing here and it changes other things in other places. I'll give you a brief example. So there's some evidence, and it's fairly good evidence, that aluminum, which is added to some vaccines, may increase the risk of some autoimmune conditions. There's some debate over it. I've looked at some of the evidence. It's pretty favorable. I won't drag the audience into all of the details, but that's just an example. And that's like the one thing, right? Our systems are infinitely complex. And it's the idea that, there aren't going to be potential, adverse events that we're not even anticipating is just bugs. It's nonsense. So, yes, we should be investigating all these things. And it should be
all right, Dr. Ladapo, we got to leave it there, and we've also lost connection once again. But we appreciate you, Dr. Ladapo, Surgeon General of Florida, and we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, news story coming out, and this is one reason I was just asking. Wall Street Journal reporting, and we'll talk about this a little bit. Headline exclusive, RFK Jr. to link autism to Tylenol use in pregnancy and folate deficiencies. Kennedy's autism report, touted by Trump, will suggest using pain relievers during pregnancy may be linked to the developmental disorder. And again, I was just asking that question. Autism rates have exploded. This is a story that is just breaking right now. From the Wall Street Journal, just got the alert popping into my phone, and we'll talk about it a little bit. But I think it is indicative of a great deal of apprehension from so many people out there in this listening audience, but also the MAHA movement in general, which is overwhelmingly made up of moms. There's lots of dads involved too, but overwhelmingly made up of moms. And I think a lot of you are asking questions that you might not have asked if COVID had not happened and you hadn't been told that your kids had to be injected with all these drugs. We'll talk about it when we come back. In the meantime, parents with kids old enough to play on their own with friends, but not old enough to carry cell phones. What do you want to do? How do you want to stay in touch with your kids? We've got a 10-year-old. He doesn't have a cell phone yet because we don't give our kids cell phones until they're 14 years old. Trust me, we've heard a lot of complaints about that, but overwhelmingly, the data now is suggesting the longer you can keep your kids off of their own cell phones, the better it is for their mental health. And so maybe a lot of you are also making that choice. Maybe some people going with watches. I've seen a lot of people out there with watches they're able to be in touch with kids. How about with these walkie-talkies? If you remember back in the day, we used to have the old school G.I. Joe walkie-talkies. We would run around outside. We thought they were super awesome. Maybe one person's got it in a car, the other person does. We have in our household the ability to give our 10-year-old one of these rapid radios, and we can stay in touch with him, but we can also let him run around in the neighborhood and be able to interact with his friends without worrying about being able to get in touch with him. No setup required. Just pull them out of the box, press a button, boom, you can talk. One-touch connection. Perfect for busy families. You can talk nationwide on these in your own unique network. Visit rapidradios.com to save up to 60% right now. Free UPS shipping from Michigan. Use code radio for an extra 5% off. That's code radio, rapidradios.com. Get hooked up today, rapidradios.com.